Welcome back to On Guard Reviews, where we take a look at other discussions in the community. I am Mr. Christopher. I'm joined with Graylin Thornton. And today we have a holiday coming up called Juneteenth. So we thought it would be very important to go over that and hear about other black voices in our community. And you just did a Leathermen's discussion group on this very topic, correct?
I did. We did a discussion group on black people who were influential in the Bay Area in the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Not 2000s?
No.
No, you just skipped that.
Yeah.
So who was on this panel?
It was myself as the moderator. We had Queen Cougar, who was Miss San Francisco Leather in 1993 and is still very active in the community. We had Pony, who's a member of the Golden Gate Guards and a National Leather Boy. And we had Corso, who is on the board for the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom and is my little brother in Onyx Northwest.
And I love Pony. He actually kind of got me into pony play.
Oh, really?
Because I saw him pulling a cart at a
Pony's
gear up.
awesome.
He's so good.
Yeah,
Actually, the first time I ever met him, he was at the Eagle. I'm smoking a cigar. He has a pint of ice cream. He was just scooping it right out of the pint of ice cream while all these leather guys were around him. And he's just like, he didn't give two shits. He's just like, nom, 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 nom.
No. I mean, with you, if I had some ice cream, I'd be all about it. Like milkshakes. Love me some milkshakes. Anyway, chocolate, by the way.
So tell us, for those of us who may not know, which is a lot because I didn't even know what Juneteenth was, what is Juneteenth?
So you mean tell the white people?
Tell the white people.
Okay.
Tell the white people like
so,
teach the children.
As you know, President Lincoln freed the slaves in 1863. And the state of Texas didn't tell their slaves nor let them go. So Texas held on to their slaves for 2 more years. And then on June 19th in 1865, when the Union troops arrived to Texas, they liberated those slaves because they had no idea they had been free for 2 years.
Jesus, did they not have Twitter?
No, they didn't. They didn't have Facebook.
They
Could you
didn't have
imagine
any
if
of
they
that.
had Facebook? Oh my God!
The misinformation.
Yeah. You're free. You're not. You're free. You're not. Let's argue about it. You know?
So this was a Zoom panel discussion for Leathermen's discussion group.
Yes. Yes.
And what all did you talk about?
Well, the purpose of the panel was to talk about people who worked in the Bay Area in the leather community who were black, but either passed away or moved away, and everyone forgot about them. And basically, people think it's just me and Queen Cougar and Lance and a few other people who are mainly the black people who did things in the Bay Area early on, but there were so many others. And so we wanted to bring those people to light and let them live a little and get some credit for the contributions they made.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's take a look at this, and I can't wait to hear these perspectives.
Haha.
We are really happy to have Graylin Thornton here moderating a discussion with some folk from the community that are friends of LDG, and we're really excited to see. So I'm going to turn it over to Graylin to do introductions and start it off. Thanks, Graylin. We're really excited for tonight. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah. Well, thank you, LDG, Jay, everyone, for having us here. The concept of tonight's program is to introduce everyone, all of our friends, to other Black people who made a difference early on in the Bay Area. Now, people think that it was just Queen Cougar and I, and then Pony came along. But when we think about it, there were other Black people doing things early on. And since it's Black History Month, I thought, let's visit those people and see what they did and how they influenced us and how they built up the Bay Area also, because it took a small Black village to build up the Bay Area. So I want to bring that to light and let everyone know that it wasn't just a few people. There were many of us. And when we think about it, there were a lot of people of color who weren't Black. There was, Mr. Marcus, there's Ingu Young, there's all kind of people who were doing things early on. So Black people and people of color didn't just appear recently. We've always been here, we've always been working, we've always been doing things. So with that said, I'm going to ask each panelist to just give a brief introduction of themselves, let us know who they are. And of course, I'm going to start with Queen Cougar. So Queen Cougar, please.
Hello, everybody. Um, I'm Queen Cougar. I have been around for 30 years plus in the scene. And I was fortunate because I think I was an assertive, out there kind of personality to meet the assertive, out there personalities in the community at the time when I came in. I started out in the San Francisco community, and there were people who had, as Marcus explained to me, many of the men had come out of the service and come towards San Francisco because it was known to be a place where you could be openly gay and have a life. And they could not go back to the places that when they got out of the service, they couldn't go back to the places that they grew up and be who they were. And so people were starting to live their full lives. And I just sort of was very curious and very sexually motivated. That was my mindset. I was always, even as a teenager, very sexually motivated. Let's put it that way, which doesn't mean I was a hoe. It just means I basically really felt like sex and all the different pursuits around it and involved with it, and were very interesting things to do and be involved with. And I just love people who were free enough to be their whole selves. And that's what I found in the men's community. Now, the women's community also has many, many very strong, qualified leather women. But for some reason, I've just always been very comfortable with men. I've just always, I am a dyke, but I've always been comfortable in the company of men. And so I met people early on who were very influential in doing what was at the time just basically in the forefront of everything that was going on in the community. Everything that was going on was related to how we dealt with the AIDS crisis at that time. And people were trying to do fundraisers and all kinds of events and things to raise money. And so since I was into performing and I like to do things like get up on stage and be a badass, and I like to sing, and and I was fearless, I basically got involved in doing a lot of performing and being in the title holder circuit. And the title holder circuit was very big, but not every Leatherman was a title holder. Not everybody was. And sometimes people think because a few of us were title holders, as Graylin says, we were the only ones, but there were a lot of people in the scene, in the community, who were very active and they never had a title. But that was our world initially, and that was how I was introduced to the community. And I just basically knew everybody. So I don't want to go on any further because we can get into talking about individuals, and there were some individuals that were family members to me who we will talk about tonight. And I have stories when we get into talking about them, because that's what you do. When you have family members, you just have these stories about things that we all did. We weren't just performing, we also hung out and had good times together. So I will relinquish the floor to somebody else.
Thank you. Thank you for that. one of the things that I said earlier before everyone came in is, early on, a lot of us knew each other and we were actually all friends and we hung out together. We were all in different aspects of the leather community, but we did all know each other. And so we really did have this little family aspect. We could come, we could play, and we could go home to our own little corners and do our things. So, it really worked out well for us. That being said, I want to go to Pony.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pony. I've been in the community for a little over 20 years. I'm born and raised in Ohio, in Cincinnati, and I came to the Bay Area through the military. I was in the Navy, and being in the Bay Area, really, really excited me. When I got out of the military, I decided I'm not coming home, so I had to stay here. In discovering the gay community, and more importantly, another community, I found a home. And I started searching for a place to plant my roots and grow. And I've been attracted to several wonderful many other clubs there. And I joined the Golden Gate Guards and several other clubs along the way that became a home to me. So I come from the era of biker runs, camp out events, things like that. That's been my wonder years as a leather boy in the community. That really brought me up. And so this is where I stayed. They helped me embrace who I am as a Black leather boy Kingster that I am, and helped me grow. And so it's through that got me to where I am now. I joined several clubs. I joined ACOC, the Ulta California Leather Corps. I'm a member of the 15th Association. I'm an associate member also. And I really enjoy supporting clubs and events anywhere I can. So that's where I am in the community. And I really help supporting people with discovering who they are, what they want to embrace. And I try to mentor several title holders in the past as Mr. Alameda County Leather. So I felt that was really important. And most importantly is, being in the Golden Gate Guards and back during that time, being in biker clubs, there weren't that many of us there, Black Leathermen in there. There were a few here and there, sprinkled here and there, but not a lot. The ones I came up with was under Daddy Warren Williams. Some of you may have known him. Keith Truitt, member of the Golden Gate Guards also. And, they embraced me, helped raise me up in the community. And that's what I want to do continuing on. So it's been a major, major factor in my life. And with that, I'll pass the torch.
Thank you, Pony. And the next person is I'm going to just say this, Corso. Corso's the baby of the bunch. He's my little brother in Onyx. And so, Corso, I'm going to pass to you and have you talk a little bit about who you are and why you're here with this project.
Sure thing. Hey everyone, I'm Corso Onyx. I'm actually the one of the directors for the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom. We're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. I'm also the Sergeant at Arms for Onyx Northwest, and I was part of the first line that crossed with the Northwest chapter. I'm technical producer for the International Miss Leather, International Miss Bootblack contest. So I put together all of the virtual content for the virtual event that was last year and for the event that was just announced a few days ago that's happening at the end of April. And I'm co-founder of the Seattle Annex of the Carter Johnson Leather Library and Collection. And I'll talk about the library and the Seattle Annex as why I'm here today. Is we've really focused a lot on leather history and leather culture from the Pacific Northwest. That includes the Bay Area and really all of the West Coast, right? And because, being a person of color in leather, automatically our focus is looking at part of that POC history. So I also consider myself a leather historian and anthropologist. I think, all the facts are there. I try to find a little bit more about some small stories, talking to people who knew them. So when I look at the list of names that we're going to talk about today, obviously I didn't know any of them. Unfortunately, a lot of them have passed away. I've never lived in the Bay Area. I'm actually up in Seattle. But through the research and finding information about these people, I feel like I've come to know them and feel pretty passionately about them. And obviously, you know, everyone we talk about today isn't everyone. We have not had the chance to pull in everyone in the Bay Area who has a place in our history, you know, and there's folks from around the country that I'm also interested in doing research about. The Bay just happens to be, in my mind, one of the core places of leather history for, you know, this country and for the world. And I, you know, when I was thinking about what to say about Vern, part of me wanted to say who doesn't know about Vern, but that's not why I'm here, right? So he is also a military veteran who moved to the Bay Area after his service, and he was involved from the first step from when he arrived, you know, buying his first motorcycle, not only attending the first IML, he also arranged charter flights for people from the Bay Area to make it out to IML for the first few years of that contest. I want to say, you know, when in those first few years, that's also how he met Chuck Renslow, who was the previous producer of IML. You know, not only that, he was an early member of the SFGDIs, the goddamn independence. I think he joined in 82 and he was their road captain in 84. And to be the road captain for a motorcycle club was a big job because it's your purpose to organize the run. And from what I've read in Mr. Marcus's articles, if you did not put on a good run, everybody would know about it, even 30, 40 years later, because I'm still reading about any kind of thing that happened. But with Vern, he left the Bay Area, moving with work, moved to the East Coast. And that's where he became known as Wicked Witch of the East, where Mr. Marcus was Wicked Witch of the West. And they were so honest and transparent about everything going on in the country. Vern really became an icon on the East Coast, just as much as he was an icon on the West Coast for the first, you know, early decades of leather. When we think about when modern leather started, it's really when folks came back from the military and joined bike clubs in the early 50s, 60s timeframe, right? So Vern was one of the people who was there from day one. He was also manager of the Watering Hole Saloon. I'm not sure when it closed down, but he was the manager there for many years and the producer of the Great Buns calendar, which is funny. It was the counter to the Bearman's chest calendar. Correct me. I know I'm probably saying it wrong. But just another example of all the things that he was involved with for his time while he was in the Bay. So this is just, you know, recent picture of Vern. Mm-hmm. This is the cover from Great Buns 1993. And the problem at that time was it was showing everyone's ass, right? You can't really get mainstream beer sponsors when you're showing nudity in your content. So obviously not a fact, but in my estimation, that probably prevented it from being able to take off at such a large scale. And it's also funny, when I was looking at the old BAR articles that Mr. Marcus wrote, he also mentioned when Vern was coming back to town to get his stuff, right? So the fact that him coming back from the East Coast for a short time was newsworthy, really indicates the kind of person he was.
Now I want to go to Queen Cougar because I know you will have the best Vern stories.
Well, I have a lot of Vern stories, and you know, Vern and I were very, very close, especially after Marcus passed. You know, he was Marcus's sister, so he was my aunt. And Vern did not take any tea for the fever, as they say. He did not tolerate fools gladly. He had a very sharp tongue, but if he loved you, he really loved you. And I can't even begin to tell. I still can't delete all the emails I have from him on my email, because we had so many conversations. Vern was the kind of person that if people came, I mean, he had his likes and his dislikes in terms of, who he thought was attractive and who he did not think was attractive. But he had a similar mindset to Marcus. They really wanted to see you do well if you were involved in some pursuit, being in a, running in a contest, or even if you were just in the bar having a good time and being a little shy, they pull you out of that shyness in a New York minute, because that helped you to feel like you were participating. You could not just show up and stand around and nobody talk to you. These men would come up and say, well, what's your story? And start talking to you. And Vern was that kind of person. But, there were people who were a little afraid of him because he had a sharp tongue. And there were just so many things, so many things. He loved to take photos. And we were in the process of, I was sharing all the photos that I had found in Marcus's apartment in the end, because so many of the people in them, most people don't know who they are. Most of those men are gone now. And Vern was one of the only people in that time period who knew who all of these men were. So, I could tell you all sorts of things that I know about Vern, but the main thing is I miss the fact that somebody as real as that is gone, because people are afraid to be real. And that's what I think was the quality that Marcus and Vern had. They were very for real people. If you were being silly about something, they just say, oh, don't be silly. They would just tell the truth. And that's a thing that people seem to have issues with. Today, the truth seems to get people in trouble when, if it's the truth, it's the truth. So, yeah, I could say a lot of, with Vern, it's like, I know where the bodies are buried. I know some of the dramas that went on with people who did not behave well in the community, and Vern had a sharp, noun and a verb for them. But nothing is served in talking about those kind of things. I want people to know that you really miss having strong characters when they're gone. And I think that both Vern and Marcus didn't ever really expect to get old, and they didn't appreciate it. They weren't happy not being able to do everything that they always could do, which was party hard, smoke and drink and play with young boys. And so when that became difficult to happen because of age and health infirmities, they really didn't want to be here anymore. And it was almost their wish and their will to leave. And I think they could have both lived longer if they had a different mindset about their health, but they didn't, because they just wanted to enjoy life as they had learned to enjoy it.
I always felt that because I'm Black, Vern held me to a much higher standard than he did, the white people who were around me at that time, the younger white people. Did you ever feel that Vern expected more from you as a Black woman?
I think so, because it's like, it's not like we were running around trying to save the race, but, it's like, if you tear your drawers, everybody's going to know it, Miss Thing. And they, while I would say that he wasn't overly concerned with trying to do everything right so that all the other cultures would be able to accept us, but he was aware of it. It's like we had pride in being people of color, but we weren't obsessed with trying to, do the right thing. We were still just being whoever we were, doing whatever it is that we were of a mind to do. but he was aware that people will judge you more severely. So I'm going to tell you what I think when you behave this way or behave that way. And there were a few times when there were a few title holders who said some things on the mic that were really not cool, not very PC, not very POC PC. And Vern was too through and let us know it. Like, what is wrong with this child? You know, doesn't she understand, you know, or he understand how they're coming across, you know? And so if you were and I don't know what was going on in the mind of the people who were being that way, but you know, he just, like I say, did not tolerate fools gladly. And if you said or did something that obviously was ill-placed remark that anybody would say would make you look bad or make people who are in your company look bad, you know, he would come down on you for that. And he was not ashamed or scared to do it. You know, and if somebody, you know, some people showed up and said, oh, well, you know what so-and-so did, oh, where is she or he? And he would tell them if he saw them what he thought. And he was not afraid to do it.
Pony, let's hear what you have to say about her.
I don't know much about him as far as personally, because I wasn't here at the time during the heyday when he was here, but I heard many stories about him. From what I heard about him, he came across to me more as a father figure more than anything else, you know, as someone to look up to. I knew he was everywhere. I knew he was very blunt. And I think, you know, his boldness, his bravery, you know, inspired me. It helped give me the thick skin, you know, to move forward and embrace my truth and be my authentic self. Hearing from him, hearing the stories that he told, people told stories about knowing him and everything. I wish I met him, but I remember hearing many, many stories about him. I really can't add too much to that, but that's what I know about Vern.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. You know, you mentioned thick skin, and I want to talk about that a little bit later. But you're a member of the Golden Gate Guards, and I want to talk about someone else who's a member of the Golden Gate Guards, and I'm not sure if he's still with us. Some people say he is, some people say he isn't. The last time I saw him was at, I think, Vern's memorial, and that would be Keith Truitt. Corso, do you have info there on Keith Truitt?
As far as I know, Keith Truitt is still with us.
Oh, good.
Yeah. As you know, as recording secretary for the Golden Gate Guards, I reach out to all the members, check in on them, how they're doing. And I did reach out to him last year, and he's doing very well. You know, he's being very low key and everything, so he doesn't go out much, but he's definitely with us.
Good. Thank you.
And as far as I know, yeah, Keith was having health issues.
Yeah.
But he was still working and he was trying to keep his job. And then I guess, you know, COVID hit. So I have no idea if what, you know, happened for him during that time period. But Keith was the type of person that he was so dedicated to the people from the past. Something that people didn't know is Keith used to call Marcus every Saturday morning. He called Marcus and said, is there anything I could do for you? You need anything? And Marcus would always say, no, I don't need anything. But he said, he calls me every week. You know, that's like the connection that Keith had with the mentors of the past. He stayed in touch with them and he connected with them and he made himself available to them. And I think when some of them left, it was really hard, you know, and I haven't seen much of Keith in a public sense since the passing of people like Marcus, like Vern. That weighed very heavy on him, you know, and when Marcus passed, he was there with us, you know, for all the memorials and everything. But I think some people really felt like life changed drastically when people like Marcus passed away.
For Keith, I have that he was the second Black SF leather daddy. That was in 2000. And for those who don't know, the SF Leather Daddy and Daddy's Boy contest was started by Alan Selby, who's Mr. S, who I hope everybody knows who Alan Selby is. But when I was looking up Keith, he's actually, his title is His Serene Highness Prince de Kiev of the Grand Ducal Council. And he's in the Ducal Council of San Francisco honors certain people with the title of Serene Highness, and it's for the amount of service that they've provided to the community, to the entire San Francisco Bay Area, and to the Ducal Court. And Keith is one of those people who's a Serene Highness. I mean, the Ducal Court has been around for decades, and it's not a long list of people who have that honor. I mean, obviously, he's been involved, like you mentioned, attending memorials, and I could not find much other information about him aside from being honored for the work that he did. But unfortunately, I couldn't find too much in the various archives, but the Ducal Court does have him honored on their website. Yep, that's Keith Truitt, and that's the picture that I was able to find on the Ducal Court website. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any pictures from his title year as SF Leather Daddy. But if anyone has any pictures, please send them my way.
I'm looking at this and, SF Leather Daddy 2000. And for those of you who don't know, back in the day, the Leather Daddies were pretty much the keepers of the leather community. They would gather at the Eagle every Sunday and pretty much watch over the crowd. And back in those days, the crowd was all leather people. You didn't have much mixing at all. In fact, I don't remember seeing non-leather people at the Eagle on a Sunday. It just something that didn't happen. And the Leather Daddies would pretty much watch over that and make sure that everything was on the up and up, that people were safe, that people were okay. And the Leather Daddies did a lot of work. And personally, that was my very favorite title of all in San Francisco. I loved the Leather Daddies. Well, of course, I was a little leather boy at the time. So of course I loved all the Leather Daddies. Looking at the Peter Austin Memorial Award, Peter Austin was a Mr. San Francisco Leather early on, and he did a lot of fundraising around the Eagle. So, the fact that Keith would be honored with that just goes to show that he was doing a lot of work and a lot of behind the scenes work. Keith was just one of those people who was at everything. And again, I want to say we all were at everything because you had to go to everything back then. But, you always saw Keith. He was always very, very friendly. On the board of directors for the AIDS Emergency Fund. So Keith was very, very involved. And I wish we could get him out and, addressing people and meeting people again, because that'd be pretty wonderful. And Pony, I know you probably have some things to say about Keith because you brought him up earlier.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, Keith was part of my introduction into the Golden Gate Guards and into leather in general. He was very, very helpful. Actually, he helped guide me, into the community. He has a heart. He definitely has the leather man's heart. His compassion and his love for what he does, it just inspired everybody. As a member of the Golden Gate Guards, back when I was there, when he was there and I was just coming in, he was very instrumental in holding the club together, helping people, guiding us, everything. He was definitely a beautiful soul. And I knew he was part of the court system also, which dates back with the Guards' roots also. And so that meant a lot to us, especially to me. So, like I said before, Keith was kind of like actually my first other daddy coming into the community and showing me the way and teaching me, the proper way of carrying myself in the community and what I'm going into. So, yeah, a lot of love for Keith and being in our community. I can also reach out to him. I have his number. I'll reach out to him again and get him to come out, so everyone can see him and make an appearance. So I will work on that. I will definitely work on that.
And just for people who don't know, who are the Golden Gate Guards?
Oh, yes. Well, we are another Levi club based here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And we've been around since actually 1976 when we were in Imperial Guards, and we became the Golden Gate Guards in 1987. We host charity events throughout the calendar year. We have, several beer busts throughout the year. We do a springtime trip to Yosemite. We're most famous or infamous for our annual runs out in the woods, if those trees could talk. um, we have bikers in the club. We're open to all members in the community, and we're still around. We're the Golden Gate Guards. You can always find us in the community. Reach out to me. I'm vice president, corresponding secretary, and recording secretary. So I stay busy.
Well, that's going to segue us into the next person, because the Golden Gate Guards does this thing called the Golden Dildo Awards. And you told us something interesting about how long the Golden Dildo Awards have been around. So first of all, tell us what the Golden Dildo Awards are, and then we'll segue into the next person.
Okay. Yeah, the Golden Dildo Awards is a very humorous, fun event where we poke fun at members in the community. We have a lot of title categories that poke fun at people that you can nominate your friends for. And it goes into 3 different phases. The first phase is the nomination phase. We nominate someone for Golden Dildo Awards, and you can have various titles such as Top of Them All, Best Leather Fashionista, Best Pub Player, Best Piss Player, the Aquaman Award. We can have we have so many awards, so many categories. You can nominate them, and they're all in fun. So you can nominate your friends, your frenemies, and then we have a voting stage where you go in and you vote for your friends. It's only $1, and all the money goes to PRC. So we donate for them. We get everybody involved. And the third stage is we have an actual ceremony where we have it at our home bar, usually the Eagle, and it'll be there again this year. And it will have an event where we pass out the trophies and give out awards to everyone. So it's been one of our classic events. It's been handed down to us by Mr. Marcus. So we've been carrying on that tradition ever since he's given it to us.
Mm-hmm.
So you say that they're all fun, but I remember Ray Tilton wearing a paper
The paper wedding dress.
Yes. Yes.
So we know how these things work. They start off as fun. The next thing you know, we want them awards because an award's an award.
Yes, yes. You haven't made it until you got a Woody. It's all about the
That's
Woody.
right.
Yes.
And basically, it's a wooden cock on a
Yes.
board, and it's
It
painted
is.
gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You stay hard all the time. So, hey, you know.
And they were very popular for many, many years. But of course, there were also people who didn't have a good sense of humor and didn't appreciate getting nominated for certain things.
That's true. That's very, very true.
Like the Cobweb Award because they never had sex or something like that.
Yeah.
So there were always people who did not have a good sense of humor about things. But for the most part, it was always fun.
Yes, yes. And we raised over thousands of dollars for this event. It started off in the bars. You would cast your vote in a little ballot box in the bar, and they'll raise the money up, and you'll get a good $300, $500 and everything. But thanks to the wonders of the internet and everything, we were able to raise thousands of dollars for the PRC. Like last year, we broke a house record. We raised over $9,000.
Oh my God.
And that's all for everybody who got involved in the event. So yeah, it was very, very monumental for us to keep that tradition going.
Congratulations on that, because that is a lot of work and that is a lot of money. So definitely kudos to that.
And Graylin, I'm sorry, we can do this quick plug. Nominations open up the 27th of this Sunday, I believe. So you'll be seeing all the posts and everything going out. So look out. It's going to happen. It's going to happen April 30th of this year.
Okay.
It's coming up.
We need people we need more people of color nominating people for awards. So, you know, when we get those ballots out, definitely be filling them out because it is fun. And I'm always telling the Onyx kids, you know, we have to participate with everyone else's events. So, you know, we'll get involved with
Will somebody explain the paper wedding dress story and what it meant? So I know that the paper wedding, having been bequeathed a paper wedding dress Golden Dildo Award at one point in my lifetime, it was awarded to somebody who in the community was perceived to jump from partner to partner fairly quickly, right? So
one marriage after another.
yeah.
right, right. And I don't know, Jay, if I'd be telling people that I won that.
I was pretty bitter about it, right? As Ray, but because it was not true. But this is what happens because the Golden Dildo Awards is a fundraiser. You get to pay $1 a vote, so you can buy one of those things for somebody, right? And so that's how Ray got it. And Ray showed up to that. Ray knew he was going to get it, and he showed up to that event, the handing out of the awards, in a wedding dress made of
wedding dress.
Yeah.
A wedding dress made out of paper. Well, I think it was toilet paper. It was the toilet paper. Yeah, but it was well constructed.
Yeah. To your point earlier, Queen, you had to have a thick skin, right? Back when the community was nominating you for something, you have to have a sense of humor about yourself and have a thick skin. Yeah.
Let's just say most of us had a thick skin. There were always people who did not. And then we just say, oh, he's going to get over it, you know, and they'd just storm out of the bar or something, but they'd get over it, you know.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, deep down, you know, you want that damn award because it's an award, you know, who doesn't want an award? So let's, the next man that I want to talk about won several of those awards, and I would say he won the coveted award, the award that we all want, and that would be Andre English. Let's see, Corso, can you pull up a picture of Andre? Because I mean, once you see Andre, you will understand why Andre won the award. There's Andre. So Andre, obviously he was a bare chest calendar man. And I remember the first time I saw Andre, he's obviously quite striking, but he had this really, really soft voice and really calm voice and calm demeanor about him that just pulled you in. And, you know, like I said earlier, I was one of the little leather boys running around back in the day, and all the boys had a crush on Andre. It's just what you did, you know? So you meet Andre and you want Andre to be your daddy because of his demeanor. Yes, his looks help, but his demeanor was just so calm all the time and trusting. And he won the Golden Dildo Award for Best Top, right? I don't remember exactly what it was called.
Yeah, it was Best Top and also Golden Arm for FFA.
Who doesn't want those? Who doesn't want to be the best top and have the best arm? I mean, come on. Queen, do you have any fun stories or any tidbits about Andre?
I have to tell you, Andre was a beautiful man, of course. And one thing about Andre, he was always so sweet to me. I'm showing something here that Andre made this for me. He worked at Mr. S for a bunch of years. And there was a time when, you know, we were out and about, we'd have things made here and there. And one day I was at Mr. S picking up something maybe that I had made. And Andre came over to me and said, Queen, I have a gift for you. And he gave me something that was made, he made this specifically for me. It is, and I still have it, and I use it. if you can see, there's a cougar print, or it's sort of leopard print fabric on this side, and it's leather on that side. It's a shawl. It is my leather shawl. And I wear this to events all the time. I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. It's like, oh my God, how does someone gift you something so beautiful and tailored to you? And that was just how sweet of a person he actually was, not just soft, quiet demeanor, but really a sweet person. And he gifted me this. And, what else can I say but that I felt so proud to have the respect of this man, as I have of some of these other men. And for why? Because I've done nothing, in my opinion, to get that, except just walk around and be myself. So I wanted to make sure that tonight we saw this shawl, because this represents him to me. And I never forget him. I never forget him. And I think about him when he the last time I talked to him, he was about to go back overseas, where he was living, I think in Amsterdam or something like that. And I said, well, honey, we're just so looking forward to you, coming back. And it was a few years, but I miss him. He was just a sweet and wonderful man. So I just needed to let everybody see that this man was generous, and a lot of leather people, as kinky and twisted as we are and as they are, they have some of the biggest hearts and can do some of the most genuinely sweet things. And just simply because they could. So I wanted to share that about Andre.
I've seen that. Well, obviously, I've seen you wearing that, and I never knew that. I never knew that that's where that came from.
That's where it came from. Yes.
That's pretty amazing. Well, it's beautiful. When you hold it up again, especially the leopard side or the cougar side,
Here's the
that is
cougar princess.
gorgeous. That is gorgeous. One of the things I talk about with Corso all the time is gifting. And, when someone gives you something, and I know that that's a tradition that is argued about a lot today, do people gift people things and all of that? But when someone gifts you something, it takes on a really special meaning. I mean, of course you could go buy it, but when someone gives it to you, it makes it special, it makes it about you. It has much more of a strong meaning to it, I believe.
And it's like someone supporting you being you, your full self. I've been this queen, and, I didn't even know I needed a shawl at that time, but I have worn this to so many events, so many occasions all across the country that I had no idea, the reach that certain things would have in my life. And this is just, yet another one of those things that will endear you to a person. And as I said, he wasn't getting anything from me, no sex, nothing but pure, unadulterated, just sisterly love. And we didn't even see each other that often, but that's just it. Like, we are all out there doing our things. And when we came together, we could come together and have a ball, that day, that weekend, or whatever, and then not see each other for weeks and weeks and months again. So I was always happy to see him and his beautiful eyes. He has some beautiful eyes. Beautiful.
Those eyes. Yes.
I could tell the eyes in this black and white grainy newspaper print, and I could tell.
So he was a beautiful man. There's no denying that.
Oh yeah.
But that's my story to share.
And he was actually the first Black SF leather daddy, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. I think he won the title in 1999, right? And I think at that point the title had been around for 16, 17 years or so. But it took a minute for a Black man to win that title, but Andre was the person, right? Andre was it, who they felt was the fit for the title. And there was apparently, because everything's in newspaper print, unlike the internet, there was some drama with some kind of email circulating about his title. And in the BAR, Mr. Marcus came to his defense and basically said he's been exemplary. And Mr. Marcus apparently interviewed 100 leather folks in the Bay Area and all asked about how Andre was doing, and all of them said he was fantastic. So just interesting that, I mean, there's always going to be drama, right? And not everybody talks about drama, but in this case, Mr. Marcus put a little article that said this isn't true. I'm actually going to address this one.
Of all the people we may talk about tonight, this is the most least person you would expect drama from, was Andre. Yeah.
Pony, did you have anything to say?
Just that he had a beautiful spirit. He definitely had a beautiful spirit. I remember when he won the Top of them All award. At the time, I think it was called like the Ulysses or Hercules Award. It had different names. And I'm not surprised he won it. He was up against a lot of stiff competition. I do believe
you wanted to say that, didn't you?
You got that. So he's up against like Daddy Ray Tilton, who was always nominated but didn't get it. And I think Daddy Ray got the Susan Lucci Award. Just kept getting nominated and never got the award. So when Andre got it, it was so well deserved. He had a nice, soft speaking voice, something so smooth, soothing. He was so handsome, and it was kind of intimidating, because I thought that he's the kind of person who would just jump up and pound on his chest and just brag, but he's a really cool little kind of a guy. And that set things so calm for me to know of him and everything. And I think in honor of him, we should bring back the Golden Arm Dodo Award. We won that because we took off the category. So I think we'll bring that back next time. So yeah,
okay.
I have fond memories of Andre.
Queen Cougar, you reminded me of something, and this is so off topic, but I'm running through things in my head right now, and we were talking about family a second ago, and if I'm either making this up or it happened, did you produce the Leather Family Feud at the Eagle?
Oh my God, did I? That was the most fun fundraiser that I did. And it was
so.
You were in it. You were on, I think you were on the winning team. You were on Alan Selby's team.
Yeah.
There were two teams. I produced the Leather
If you're gonna be on team, be on Alan Selby's team.
At the Eagle, it was classic. We had Daddy Irwin, we had Alan Selby, we had Graylin, we had so many people back at that time, involved. And that was the most fun. It was so fun. I had Havana White, which that young lady is still out and about, and she loves having the memory of being able to do that. And I'm telling you, we just did some fun events. And yes, I think your team won, Graylin. I think your team was the team that won. And I think you were on Alan Selby's team.
Well, it was so long ago, I didn't know if I was just making it up.
You did not make it up, honey. Every now and then when I'm looking through my memorabilia, I come across one or two pictures of the two teams. And that is just the most favorite thing in my heart, because it was so much fun and people just screamed. I mean, the bar was like roaring because people were cracking up and laughing, and we just had fun. We had fun, So yeah, that was one of my, and Marcus was always wanting me to reproduce that. Do it again.
You should do it again.
It's a different time. It's a different time. And, we were all out hanging and doing things in post-COVID. How can we have those same times again? We have to come together on some level for us to have the camaraderie to be able to put on these kinds of events.
Right. Yeah, it just occurred to me, and I was thinking, I think Queen Cougar did a Family Feud.
Oh
You
yes,
know?
honey. Oh, that was classic, and you were on that. You were in that
Yeah.
group. Yes.
Well, good. I'm glad I didn't just make that up. um, so we talked a little bit about Andre, and I'm gonna do some skipping around because I want to go to another person who will be Omar Mosley. And I want to go to Omar because Omar, for me, being a younger Black leather man, Omar was doing a lot of the things that I would do later. Like he came like a few years before me, and so basically I just did the things that he did. Um, so before we get too much into it, I'm gonna, Corso, you have a picture and stuff of Omar, right? Ah, look at that.
So when I was looking back in old BARs for Omar, I was actually able to find this picture with Queen Cougar and Omar. I think it's when he's judging one of the Mr. SF leather titles. One.
I mean, looking back at that, Queen Cougar, you don't look like you've changed. I'm just looking at that and looking at you right now. You look like
Oh,
the same person.
well,
So yeah, Omar, and thank you, Corso. But you know, as you can see there, he was the first Mr. Ebony and Leather, and um, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But also, he was a Northern California drummer, and you'll see that a lot of the Black men or men of color in the area ran for drummer and not the IML title, the Mr. titles. And I think that was because we identified with drummer a bit more because we were our own people. We didn't want to be the person who made the speech. We wanted to be the person who played and you know, got dirty in the dungeons and did all of that. We didn't want to dress up and stand on a stage. So I think that that's where that comes from. Corso, did you have something that you want to
Yeah.
go ahead with this? Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the drummer contest because the just more tidbits of history. The first international Mr. Drummer was Ray Perea, also a man of color. Just another interesting tidbit about drummer. But for Omar, so he was, you know, he represented Northern California drummer, and he was also the first Mr. Ebony and Leather. And I know Graylin said he was going to talk about it more, but that contest was the first contest produced by African American men for African American men, which is pretty amazing when you think about the quantity of titles that exist, especially in the Bay Area. Almost every bar from that time had a associated leather title, whether that's Mr. or Miss, Watering Hole, Powerhouse. You know, a lot of different bars had these titles. But Omar was also a co-producer of one of those titles. So I'm not really sure if Mr. Polk Street Leather is still in existence, but after he served as his title year, he went on to produce additional leather contests. He was a judge. He also produced the Black Leather Christmas Party with a man named Don Ho. I haven't done much research about him yet or that party, but being co-producers for that event, they won the Peter Austin Community Service Award back in 2003. So again, that is an event that is driven based on community service that was being honored by the leather community at large. Yeah, that's what I have.
And if you look, Omar was also a member of the Golden Gate Guards. The Golden Gate Guards are in the house. So Omar was a member of the Golden Gate Guards and also won, you know, the Peter Austin Award. So, you know, you're having men of color doing things and being recognized for things early on. You know, we were here, we were doing all that. And so Pony, could you talk a little bit more about the Golden Gate Guards and being men of color in that club? And, you know, so we have, you know, certain men of color being in that club? Why do you think the Golden Gate Guards is a draw?
I think mainly because we have a lot of people, who enjoy the atmosphere, of what we do. I mean, as far as, like I said, our annual runs that we go on, the retreats, it attracts all people. And I think, the men of color that I've seen that join our runs, they enjoy the brotherhood. The brotherhood is all encompassing. We're all together, all one. And I think that's one of the main reasons why. And a lot of times, when you get one or two Black men in the club, that attracts more that feel that, more welcome and want to come and join, and it grows from there. We're also friends with another club that had biker events that's no longer together, which is the Low Box. I don't know if you remember them, but they have Black members in their club too. And so, it takes one to come in, to get involved in the club, the more come in, and it has a unique brotherhood. At least I know the Golden Gate Guards does, because it goes back such a long way. We attract so many people from back in the day, back in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, and it's always continued on. So it just had that family bond that was never missing. So that's one of the main attractions why we have so many, we do have men of color in our club.
But when I thank you, when I think of Omar, and you said something, Corso, that he put on this event with Don Ho. Don's birthday is this Sunday coming up. And he is having a party at 440, I think. And I have to say, those boys partied way too hard for me. They
were the partiers. They were the partiers of the Bay Area. Make no mistake about it.
Oh yeah.
If you wanted to party, it was with Ho and Omar.
Oh yeah.
And their house was they had a lot of parties at their house.
I remember they had this one party where they had a whole roasted pig on the table. And so this is a Black thing. I think my favorite part of that pig was the skin, because the skin was all crunchy. And so basically I just sat there eating the skin. Nobody else would eat the skin because they were all like, ew. And so, being a Black man from the South, I'm like, that's it right there. Give me some hot sauce. I'm good. I'll just sit right here with that. But yeah, Omar was the first Mr. Ebony Leather, but he took the place of someone else who was Ebony Leather, and that person was Jimmy Lee Murray. And did you find a picture of Jimmy Lee, Corso?
I have a picture of Jimmy Lee.
You have a picture? Okay. Yes.
Yep, that's the one I found.
That's the one you found. And you have, how come you have that picture?
How come I have it? Because Jimmy Lee was my son. He was one of my leather sons. In fact, I've got a letter right here, a Christmas letter from him. And I was looking at it earlier. It's one of those things that, they would come, him and his lover would come to our house when I lived back east, and I was in a particular relationship, and we would have these huge leather Christmas parties, and Jimmy Lee would come and he'd be like, come here, mama. And he would be on me, trying to get me to do things that I didn't want to do. He liked to, nudge me like that. But I loved him. I loved him so much. I mean, when I say there are certain people in this community that I consider to be part of my inner family, Kane Berlinger is my son. Jimmy Lee Murray is my son. We have spent a lot of quality time together. We have laughed together. We have cried together. We have eaten together. I used to cook food for them. And one of the last times I was with Jimmy Lee, there was a snowstorm up where he lived. I was there one night. We went to the club where he worked. I went home with him. I woke up in the morning, I was snowed in. I couldn't even get back home. It was just, we just had a lot of life experiences. And I'll never forget one Christmas, I got this present that I was a little ambivalent about. I never really learned how to ride a bike. So my mates bought me a recumbent tricycle for Christmas present. And Jimmy Lee was determined that I was going to ride that bike. He was the first person on it. And somewhere in my memorabilia, there is a picture of him on that Christmas riding that damn bike. I could not find it. I wanted to find it and show it to you guys, but this was the picture that I could find, And I just wanted to say, I'm so happy that we're able to talk about him because he was so lively and he was so, he was naughty. I think, Graylin, he had that naughty attitude, that suck his teeth and tell you some tea kind of attitude. But he was a sweet, sweet man. And I hate that he left so soon because we had a lot more living to do. And that's all I can say about Jimmy Lee. There was something else I wanted to say because we got so fast into Jimmy Lee and off of Omar. It's become show and tell for me, but I have something that was given to me when Omar passed by Ho. And, when they were partying and everything, they used to consider because Ho and Omar were so close and they did everything together that they called Omar Ho's first lady, right? And so he was the Tiffle. They called him the Tiffle. It was a joke. Right? Well, anyway, the Tiffle pearls. Ho gave me Omar's pearls when he passed. These are the Tiffle pearls. And I remembered that I had them, that I keep them in this stein that I have. It's a Cougar stein. And I keep Omar with me all the time. He's in my bedroom in this stein. This is the Tiffle pearls. And these were Omar's. And he would wear them with all his leather, his long leather, trench coat. And these guys were amazing. They were very masculine. They were very butch. And they were very girlfriend at times, but I love them dearly. And I just wanted to show that because it's like, there's a piece of them with me. They're not just with me in memory. There's pieces of these people like Andre's shawl and Omar's, pearls. They're still here with me.
Jimmy Lee's Christmas letter.
Oh my God. Yes.
Do you remember that Omar had like a leather cape? Do you remember that cape?
Yes.
I wanted that cape. Omar had this really long leather cape. And I remember one day picking it up and it was heavy as hell.
Heavy. And he wore that cape, honey. And most of the time just with a cock ring. And I mean, he didn't wear a whole lot under it, his boots, and that's it. And that's how you'd see, and his cap, and he would be out there, his cover, with his long cape on. Him and Ho, both of them, they were the dynamic duo, honey.
Oh yeah. Corso, did you have anything else to say about Jimmy Lee that we might have missed?
Just that he was also Mr. Cheeks and Chaps International. I don't know much else about that title, but it is pretty cool that, I mean, even though his name just wasn't on this short list, right? Jimmy Lee is still another person that made an impact on the Bay Area community, right?
Yes.
And also, I keep saying Bay Area community. I'm up in Seattle. It's really a national impact because a different magazine, Black Leather and Color out of New York, was writing stories about all of these people from New York to let all of the Black people in the country know that there were title holders representing them in the leather mecca of the country, which is the Bay, right? New York has its different leather history, and that's a different class I can talk about, but it's not just in the Bay, it's really nationally. Like even like Graylin, you and Queen Cougar were in that initial magazine of Blick being Black title holders that people needed to look at and learn from. and that was back in or late 1994,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you know, the people on this list and the people in the Bay Area, it's not just San Francisco, right? The impact is wide reaching, even today, right? There's a ton of people of color active right now that just aren't on this list because they're active right now. But I'll stop now.
Queen Cougar, I don't know how you feel, or Pony, how you feel, but I didn't really, it hadn't occurred to me that we were reaching as far as we were. You know, to me, we were just doing what we were supposed to be doing because, you know, people like Vern was telling us that this is what we're supposed to do. So we're just doing it. There was no like, is anybody paying attention to us or any of that? We're just doing what we thought we were supposed to be doing.
Well, you know, Graylin, to add on to that, that's true. You know, you move through this very motionless in a sense that you don't know who you're affecting. You know, and I think as people of color, we are really in this exalted position, you know, in this community, whereas, you know, we do stand out. What we do, you know, people see what we're doing and they take notice and everything. You know, like just mentioning Jimmy Lee, I remember seeing him and just amazed of his sexuality. I mean, he just oozes sexuality. He's so sexy. I think I saw him. There's a bar called the Phoenix in the Castro years ago.
Had a motorcycle hanging on the ceiling.
Yeah, nice bar. And there he was, you know, and all his Jimmy Lee gloriness, just looking hot and sexy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't he one of the guys that coined the phrase Mr. Marcus the Merciless? Because that name came out as Mr. Marcus' tag name.
I'm not sure where Marcus the Merciless came from. I wouldn't be able to say for sure where it started, but I mean, it was pretty widespread that he was considered that because of the things that he would write in the column.
Oh, right.
You know, yeah. Jimmy Lee also worked at the Mint for many years as a bartender. And he would, in fact, during the time when he was Cheeks and Chaps, because he would be in just the harness behind the bar and his boots. Exactly. You know, so you could see those chaps. You could see that ass wherever he was working. You know.
Yeah, Cheeks and Chaps was one of those titles that was a little confusing because it started off as just something fun. You know, we're gonna pick the guy who looks the Phoenix Bar is now the Upper Par Walgreens. Oh my God. Okay. So don't tell us that, Jay. But you know, Cheeks and Chaps started off as something fun to pick the guy who looks best in his chaps. So who has the best cheeks in his chaps? Right. And as things went in that day, you know, someone wins that title and then they decide, well, I have a title. It was a fun title, but I'm going to do something with it anyway. And so that's kind of how that took off. It was like, it was just a fun title, but then people who won it did things with that title. So oh, you had that picture of Jimmy Lee, but I want to talk a little bit now about the Ebony and Leather contest, because there is a lot of confusion on that contest. And
there was always a lot of controversy about it.
A lot of controversy. You know, it was funny because I think, Corso, you have a picture of me and Gregory Adams up there. And I'm going to preface this by saying, if Corso shows that picture, remember I was very, very young. So, and as young people, we could wear whatever we want, and I will never wear anything like that again. You know? Okay. So, but we're looking at this because the other person is Gregory Adams. And God, the Ebony and Leather contest was Gregory's brainchild. And what it was supposed to be was to pick a Black person, a Black leather person, to go into the Black community to work. And that's what we wanted. We wanted someone who could go to Black events, who could go over to Bayview and Hunters Point and those sort of things, and let other Black people see that there are Black leather people.
Mhm.
But it was hard to do that because the greater Black community wasn't real open to us going into the Black community as leather people. In fact, I won an award from the Black AIDS Coalition, I think they were called, and they told me to accept the award, I couldn't wear leather. And so I declined the award because it's like, well, why give an award if you can't wear your leather? And so there was a lot of resistance there in the Black community. Now, Jimmy Lee did win that. He was the first winner of that, but there was also part of that contest that Gregory wanted the winner of that contest to appear in a magazine. And Jimmy Lee didn't want to appear in the magazine. Now, he
Wanted
could
him to
wear,
appear nude.
yes, he wanted to appear nude in the magazine.
Yes.
Now, Jimmy Lee could wear a thong this big, but he was not going to appear nude.
Exactly.
And you know, I admired him for that. He stood up for himself. And you know, he wasn't told before the contest, and neither was I, that this was a requirement. So he stepped down. Omar was the first runner up, and so Omar stepped into that place and became then the first Mr. Ebony and Leather. So
That was a true story. Totally true
yes.
story. And the reason that Jimmy Lee did not want to appear nude was because he said, I don't know what I'm going to do in the future. What if I choose to go for a job or a certain thing, you know, and our pictures ended up in, well, you know, we're pretty sure that our pictures are in a lovely file down at the FBI, all of us, you know, because that's just the truth of life, right? He was thinking in terms of his future, and he said, hey, I don't know what I'm going to choose to do. I don't want to appear nude and have that be a problem for me in my life down the line. So he made that conscious decision for that reason.
Mhm.
But they fought him on it, you know.
Yeah.
When I was
Yeah.
when I was doing research about the contest, because everything's in the newspaper, because it's like Twitter and you can't erase it. So all of the drama about this was talked about in the newspaper. And I mean, drama aside, I think the part of it that's so amazing is the magazine that is this cover is nationally distributed, right? Like the point of the contest of Ebony and Leather was to let Black people around the country know that
Right.
being leather and kinky and gay was okay, right? And in the early 90s, we also have to be aware of what's going on in society in the late
Exactly.
80s and early 90s for Black people. So even a magazine trying to make this statement, in addition to everything going on at that time for our people, is really impressive. I mean, drama aside, it's just looking back at the associated impact of putting something like that together, and that contest was the first of its kind in the world. So just wanted to say that with my historian hat on.
That contest was the first of its kind like that, but there was also the pendulum bar, and you have to be of a certain age to remember the pendulum bar. It was the Black bar in the Castro. It was the most rundown bar in the Castro, the dingiest bar in the Castro. But again, it was the Black bar in the Castro. And they had a leather contest, the Mr. Pendulum leather contest. And Omar won that contest, I think, at one point. I know that Gregory Adams won that contest. So, the pendulum is now what Toad Hall is in the Castro. And the funny thing about that is when they made it Toad Hall, they completely renovated it and upgraded it and all of that. But while it was the Black bar, you couldn't get them to do anything. The bathrooms didn't work. The floors leaked. The DJ booth was awful. There wasn't a back wall for the bathroom. There was a fence. So if you were pissing in the bathroom, the people in the parking lot could see you. I mean, that's just how bad that bar was. But as soon as they wanted to make it a white bar, they upgraded it. But they had a leather contest, and so Mr. Pendulum would also be a Black man who would compete at Mr. San Francisco Leather. So again, we were doing stuff back in the day.
And there were, and when the pendulum closed, there were protests outside of the bar when they decided to close for renovations and fired the bar staff. I mean, the bar staff was less than 10 people, but when you look at the bars in the leather community, that bar staff is such a core part of the culture. Like Mr. Marcus talked about which bartenders would be at which bar at which night, so you knew who to go talk to, right? So the people that worked at the bar are like unofficial title holders, right? Because everyone knows them and everyone wants to get with them. I mean, right. So then the Pendulum Bar and that Mr. Pendulum Leather, it's interesting because it was the only black bar in the Castro that was really open and accepting. And being over 30 years old, that's, I mean, it started in the mid 60s and they just never bothered to renovate it. So it's interesting that they closed for renovations and opened, I guess, as Toad Hall.
There's a lot of drama about that
Yeah.
particular location, and it's because of the owner, basically, and it's been that way for many years, but that's neither here nor there.
But if you think about it, back in, because we're talking the late 80s, early 90s, there were other bars in the Castro that didn't let Black people in. And one of those bars was the Midnight Sun. And I remember very specifically Black people protesting outside the Midnight Sun because we couldn't get into the Midnight Sun. And so I still don't go to the Midnight Sun for that very specific reason, because there was a time when we couldn't go in. They asked us for 2 or 3 IDs to get into that bar. And I'm telling you this firsthand, I was there. We couldn't get into that bar.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. The other thing that to point out is that a lot of us, when we're talking about getting widespread notoriety across the country coming from the Bay Area, it was because every year we all went to IML. That was like, that's what everyone did. In fact, when I first got into the scene, I said, well, what do people do? And the person that was mentoring me told me, which was Ann Susie West, and said, well, what we do is we gather in May at IML, International Mr. Leather, and people save their pennies so they can go there. And it's like connecting with the leather family en masse. And so a lot of the people from the Bay Area went every year to IML. And of course, people like Marcus were very knee-deep involved in it. Marcus read the top 20 of the people running at IML every year. And so, we were involved here, but we went across the country and had a big presence at IML because so many title holders came from the Bay Area because of all the bars sponsoring a title holder, all the clubs sponsoring a title holder. And so, we had a lot of presence across the country simply because there was just so many people doing things here and so many groups and bars. And then we get to IML Chicago in May, and a good third of the stage was contestants from the Bay Area.
Oh yeah. And one of the things that I remember very well about Vern, people today talk about gatekeeping. Well, Vern gate kept. When someone ran for a title, back in the day, to run for a title, you had to have already done the work. You couldn't start at your title. And so if there was anyone on a stage that Vern didn't know, Vern would speak out and say, who is he? What has he done? And call people out on the stage, because judging at those times was done live. There wasn't the pre-judging that was sanctioned off. So everyone got to hear all the questions that the judges would ask. And the question that Vern would always ask is, who are you? What have you done? And why have we never seen you before? And at that point, that person was pretty much disqualified. So, you had to know people for a while before you could even run for a title. You had to do all that work ahead of time, and then you got to run for a title. It was kind of your reward, so then you could work more after that point. So yeah, I want to just point out that Vern was definitely the person who made sure that anyone who ran for or held a title deserved to be on that stage, and that was like Vern's thing. Um, and we're running out of time, but I want to get to this because this is really fun. Um, I was in a Zoom meeting with Bluff over the summer. They did these Zoom meetups so that people could see each other. And it was right after the whole Black Lives Matter thing really took off. And there was an old white man in that meeting. And he said to me, I know a Black leather man from the 70s. And I was like, well, is that Vern? And he's like, no, this guy's name was Lisa Truck. And so I thought, well, that's a great name, Lisa Truck. Okay. And he went on to tell me about this guy that was a member of one of the bike clubs and was also a drag queen. And he entertained at the bike runs. And Corso, I think you found some information on Lisa Truck that you're going to share with us.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't find any pictures of Lisa Truck, but that's because they were around as a drag queen in the early 70s. So another example of military veterans coming back to San Francisco to start their leather journey, because Lisa Truck moved to the Bay in 1961, right? So when we're talking about the early 60s, late 50s, Lisa Truck was one of those people that was on the motorcycle doing the runs at the bars in the foundation of modern leather, right? So they worked at this bar called the Blythe's Bounty. I don't know when it closed, but back in the 60s, it was it was a mixed bar, right? And we're talking about early 60s. That's pre-civil rights movement. So to have a mixed gay bar in the 60s that features primarily Black drag queens in the Bay is really a huge part of gay history in that area, right? So Lisa was one of the headliners for that bar. I mean, in that time, you could find her at the bar there, and she was so good, she was actually awarded by community organizations. I think in the early 70s, there was this, what does my note say? It's like the Crusaders. And that was a drag contest held to fundraise for the community fund, the inner community fund, which later became the Leather Alliance. Right. So if you look at, the origins of today's Leather Alliance is built on the labor of drag queen performers like Lisa Truck. Lisa's actual name is Bill, but I'll call her Lisa because that's really what she was known for. She also did drag performances at a lot of the bike runs. She was one of the members of the San Francisco Goddamn Independence, which was the non-club club. She was also an honorary member of a lot of the bike clubs that were around at the time, including the Cheaters. I wasn't able to find anything about the Cheaters, but back in the day, bike clubs had 10 a dozen people, right? And once those 12 people move on, if they never had meeting minutes, if they never had an official patch or logo, a lot of the times those bike clubs have been forgotten. But Lisa was also the first Black member of the Coits of San Francisco, another motorcycle club. I'm not sure if it's still around, but when you talk about being the only, or being one of the first, this was one person that I was able to find that was one of the only. And thinking about the origins of the Leather Alliance, it's really awesome that this drag queen was one of the performers who participated in 73, 74, and 70. I want to say 79 or 77. I can't remember exactly. But she was definitely active. And since drag shows were a core part of the entertainment for bike runs, Pony, you mentioned the Golden Gate Guards have bike runs and do drag shows. Like, it's still a part of that culture, right? It goes back to the first runs that happened in 1962. I early 60s, late 50s, for the first gay motorcycle club. And although I don't have the evidence, I wouldn't be surprised if Lisa was performing at some of those very first runs. So just, yeah, I'm enamored with this person. I mean, they passed away over a decade ago, but just imagining what they went through being coming out of the military in the late 60s and living their truth in the Bay as a gay Black man doing drag. Whew, the challenges, like I can't imagine. But I wasn't able to find a picture of him at the time. But that's what I was able to find, in the research about him.
Corso, to add on to that, run shows and retreats out into the woods and the biker runs, even though the Golden Gate Guards, we no longer do that. I believe the Satyrs are still around, and they still do that also. They have a trip to Badger Flat, I think it is. And, in that same biker tradition, they do host a show, a drag show and everything. So
I don't think.
you can still, still see that. So it's like 1 or 2 biker clubs are still around. I believe they're still doing that. I know the Satyrs are.
Lisa Truck was actually one of the performers at Badger Flats for many years, because when I was looking at that club's old minutes, because they wrote shit down, I saw that they mentioned Lisa in some of the early runs, because I think that might have been Badger Flats in 61 or 62 was, I think, the first bike run.
Wow.
It was amazing to me to be in a Zoom meeting with all these people, and one little old white man says to me, I knew a Black Leatherman back then, and his name was Lisa Truck. And it just goes to show, like, you don't know who knows what anymore, because, this man just happened to be in that meeting with me and just happened to want to tell me that bit of information. And to me, it was him saying, hey, this has been going on for a while, and I may be an old white man, but I was there. And I saw this, and I knew this person, and you need to know them. And I think that's one of the things that, as Black people, as people of color, and Queen Cougar, you said something like this earlier, we need to pass our history down and let people know that there's people been doing things for a long time, for years and years and years, and we seem to forget about them. Because they didn't win the big awards or the big titles and stuff, but they're still working there. They're still doing all that work way back in the day.
Yeah, I wanted to also mention Unicorn Escobedo. Unicorn was one of the people that started the, they do the, oh God, let me look at the name of it here. The Soma Guardians. This was Unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
And Unicorn was a leather man, and he was someone who was very supportive of every leather event. And literally for years, you can think back across the board. If you went to a leather event, you had to put your coat and your backpack or whatever somewhere. And usually the Soma Guardians were there, manning a table and being of service to the community. And so people like Unicorn never ran for a title, but they were very, very out there and active and supportive and nurturing to people in the community. And so I just wanted to make sure that we put his name out there, because he was a person of color, and, and not forget him. I think the thing that we sometimes don't realize is that our culture, the BDSM culture, we live it when we're young, but we don't actually want to acknowledge that if we survive, we're all going to get old one day. We're going to get mature. We're going to get gray. We're going to get unable to do some of the things that we are known for. But that doesn't make us any less valued. We can remember the people who came before us and did the things they did, but everyone is going to eventually morph out of what they're known for. There'll be a day when, you will not be able to do all the fabulous things that you do now in the dungeon because your body will not let you do it, you know? But that doesn't mean that you deserve any less respect. You should be remembered for the skills that you had and the things that you gave, the love that was shared. That's what I'm hoping to get out of tonight, is that somebody heard something I had to say about all these men. They shared so much love with me. I'll have it till the day I die. I have little pieces of them, but I have my memories of times we shared, laughter, and, you know, just having a ball at IML, sitting in the lobby until 4 a.m, you know, exhausted out of our minds, but nobody wants to go to their room and go to bed because we're all there together, you know.
And you might miss something.
You might miss something, honey. You don't know who's coming down the hall with what, you know. And then with people like Marcus and Vern who would, what's with this child, you know, and oh, whose room are you coming from? And, you know, good natured. We laughed, we had a good time. And I just want people to, you know, realize we have a culture that comes from way back, and it's going to keep going on, and the youth come in and do their thing. Has to be. That's perfect. That's wonderful. Reinvent the wheel. Do your thing. But don't forget those who came before you, because one day you'll be one of them, and we will be happy to remember you.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for saying that, because what came up for me was that, you know, we read about people all the time, and you know, especially, you know, when Corso was doing his research and he was telling me about all these people that I knew and things about them that I didn't know about them, but they were real people to us, and they were flesh and blood, and they were friends, and these were people that we laughed with and cried with and fought with and made up with, and all of those things for lots and lots of years. You know, I hit the scene when I was 26. That's when I joined my first club, Southway Leather Uniform Group. And so I knew all these people for all that time. And, you know, we would make up, we'd fall out, we'd get back together, we'd make up. And it was just life. But there was no canceling of anyone. You never forgot anyone. You never just put anyone aside. You knew that this was going to blow over at some point, you'd be kissing the next week. You know, it's just the way the whole thing worked. But before we run out of time, there is one more. And this guy came to me, I don't know if you all remember, well, he's not passed away, Jack Fritcher, who was one of the editors of Drummer. And he told me about another Black man that he knew in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And again, it's like, why do you all know these people? We've never heard of them. So then we start investigating. And I threw this one at Corso again and said, you know, tell us about Al Smith. Al Smith was a Leatherman that Jack interviewed in the 80s, who was around in the 50s as a Black Leatherman in the 50s. So Corso.
Yep. So I definitely want to talk about Al, and I know that he's probably the last one we have time for, but I did want to touch on real quick, talking about our current, the history that we're living now, right? And people that are around now. And in my research, I found out about this person, Billy Aviles.
Aviles.
Billy Aviles. Thank you. And unfortunately, he passed away only a month ago, a month and a half ago. And his memorial
went to his memorial last weekend.
Look, I'm saying his memorial was the 13th, February 13th, right? And thinking about the impact that people now have, we need to give people their flowers now, right? If we were a week earlier, we would have had the chance to talk about Billy, and Billy would have known the impact that he made on people throughout his leather journey, since he was a unofficial bodyguard for the Imperial Court in the 90s, right? So Billy's gone, and I know we don't have a time to get into his whole story, but I'm looking at people on this Zoom, and I know some of y'all on this Zoom that I wish I could talk about, because you're doing things for the Black community and for the leather community now, right? So Billy's no longer with us. Rest in power, obviously, but it's just really important to remember the history that we have now, people that came before us, and then people that are doing the work. So I'm going to get off my soapbox and I'm going to talk about Al, because Al is who I was given the mic for. So Al, again, another military veteran, right? Moved to the Bay Area, left his wife in the 40s after being, left his wife, realized he was gay, was in the military, came to the Bay. And he talks about being the only Black man at everything he saw. Like now we talk about being the only. I talk about being the only in spaces I occupy. But back then in the late 50s, he actually was the only, right? He talks about being at the Toolbox bar. For those who don't know, the Toolbox was a bar that was around in the Bay, and Time magazine featured an article about that bar in 1964. And that article about that Toolbox bar in San Francisco let the country know that A, leather was a thing, and B, it happens in San Francisco. Right? So Al talks about being at the Toolbox, and he actually said it wasn't popular in 1961, 1962 when it first started. He was spending his time at different bars. He was at a place called Jack's Waterfront, which was a mixed bar in the early 60s that he often went to, another gay leather bar. I haven't really been able to find much other information about it, but that was another place that was a gay bar that he went to. Different area than the Toolbox, different crowd than the Toolbox, but still a place for gay Black folks to gather in the greater Bay Area. So thinking about Al, he actually talks fondly about getting his first motorcycle in 1956. And that's like I said before, that's right when leather was starting in the Bay and in the country in that mid 50s time frame. He was at the Toolbox when it first opened. He was at the Why Not, one of the first leather bars in the area. He was at Phoebe's, another one of the first leather bars. And he always talks about being the only Black guy in the area. But since it's biker culture, he had really fond memories of, he might come late to the bar, but he would find a spot to park his bike, rev up, and anybody in line would go look and see who had just shown up and see it was Al on his bike. And then he would find some fun for the evening, even if he couldn't get in the Toolbox for that night. There's a couple famous pictures of Harleys outside of bars, and Al's bike was pretty much always one of those bikes for late 50s, early 60s, that entire time, until he talked about he got rid of the bike because he wasn't as safe as he used to be and he was having too much fun on it. But even without a motorcycle, he was still really active in the leather community. Again, he was another Black man at that first Badger, or not the first, he was actually at the second Badger Flats. He missed the first one. He was around, he just didn't go, but he showed up at the second one because it was a good party and everyone had a good time and he knew he had to be there. But Al Smith, it's interesting. He comes from, I'll call it old guard, because everyone has an old guard, new guard story. But in the 50s, when people were figuring out what leather meant, he wore leather because it was required for him to ride his bike. So he talks about not understanding why leather was a fetish and why people were interested in wearing leather but not riding motorcycles. And when we look at our culture now, riding motorcycles is just a subset even of people who are into leather because it's a fetish in a larger community. But we really can't forget that our culture comes from that biker community, those people that came back from the military in whatever war, in whatever decade. It's people from around the country who went to war and found themselves in a tough time that came home to the Bay, right? And found leather in the Bay. And Al is one of those people that did it first, right? He was the only back when it was even harder being the only than it is now. So Al, you're probably not going to find anything about him. There's not anything published, but I mean, he was there, and it's important that we remember the legacy that he has. Because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was born in 1990. He was out doing things before I was even thought of, right? So when I look at where I am in the future of my journey, people like Al and Lisa and Graylin and Ponley and Queen Cougar, you know, all these folks make it possible for us younger people to do this thing we do so easy. But that's Al. Obviously, I never met him, but the stuff that he went through was just so impressive, being the only and being in the bar always, and not turning away from it, even though he might have been alone and the only Black man there. He found his family in the leather community.
When you talk about people, Black people being in the Bay Area in the 50s and 60s, and then remember what was happening in the rest of the country, especially in the South in the 50s and 60s, to think about, you know, in the other parts of the country, you know, Black men are being killed, lynched, hunted. But here in San Francisco, you have a Black man walking into a leather bar, not seeing anyone who looks like him on a poster. There's no red carpet. There's no welcome letter. There's no roses. There's nothing welcoming about it. But yet he gets there, gets off his motorcycle, and walks into the bar anyway. You know, the type of bravery that takes. And Queen Cougar, you mentioned earlier having a thick skin. Imagine how thick your skin has to be a Black man in the 50s and 60s to walk into a leather bar and say, okay, here I am.
He got his first bike in 1956 before the first leather bar even existed, right? So he's, exactly. 1956. That's, if you don't know what's going on in the country in 1956, you need to do some research.
Yeah, like you did.
We didn't even get the right to vote or anything until the 60s. So come on. You know, these people were radical and they were really fearless, really fearless.
Well, we are almost out of time. Well, we've actually gone over time, but I'm going to give each of you some closing words. Corso, I will start with you.
Obviously, I didn't live this time. I just love researching it. So thank you for including me. I'm glad I got to be here, and it was a lot of fun doing research about a lot of people that we didn't get the chance to talk about. And honestly, if anyone is interested or has questions about history in the Bay, if I don't know the answer, I want to go research it, right? So just find me on Facebook. Doing this is a passion of mine, and I think the Seattle Annex is definitely interested in pulling together any kind of Bay Area history, you know, Black or not, person of color or not. I mean, knowing where we come from is the purpose of the library, right? And knowing the names of people like Lisa and Al makes me know that I'm not the first and that I'm not alone. And there's people that came before me who've been doing this. So thank you again for including me on this from a research point of view. I had a lot of fun doing all of my homework before I got here this evening. So thanks.
I want to say thank you to everyone for being here and inviting me. It's been great. I just want to leave with everything that was mentioned and said and taught during this. Take it home with you and know that what happened, you know, with our elder statesmen of the community carries on with us today and tomorrow. And the new ones coming up now, you know, continue to embrace your kink, your truth, especially all the people of color who are coming in, discovering. Definitely be brave, be bold, stay out there, and understand that what you do now makes a big difference in the future. Because the leather lifestyle is a lifestyle. You always be true to yourself. I want to be ended with that.
I'm so proud to have spent all the years that I've spent in this community. To whatever degree that I may go forth and have experiences in the community, I will always have everything that I have already experienced, and it's priceless to me. I want to say I am so thankful for the people, the youth like Corso, who are willing to be historians for us and keep it alive. Because for the people that are, heady and interested in doing that kind of work, that keeps us on everyone's lips and in everybody's hearts forever. And, some of us were just players. We just thought that's what we were about. And we ended up being activists and doing all kinds of work that we never anticipated. But it has been a joy and a thrill for me to do it. And the relationships that I have with people like Graylin and Pony and other people who we've talked about today have made my life worth living. So I thank you for that. And I look forward to what the youth will do in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And, I could echo pretty much what everyone has said, but one of the reasons I wanted to do this was to say that, we don't all have to have a title or, some accolade or awards to do the things that we're going to do. Not everyone has to be an activist. Some of us could just show up and be the support. Someone has to be in the crowd. Someone has to buy the raffle tickets. Someone has to go to the beer bus. So we can all play a part in all of this. We can all play a part in making our history. So, 30 years from now, when Corso's looking back and telling our stories, he could say, yeah, I know them, and, they felt this way. So it's just really important to, as time keeps moving forward, to create our own memories as we move forward and create our own stories and add those stories to the stories of the people who are no longer here. So I want to say that, and thank you, LDG, for allowing us to have this spot and celebrate Black history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, it's always been said, do we have to have separate celebrations for different, groups and colors and all that? Yes, we do. And thank you for acknowledging and understanding that. We always will need to have some separate space.
Oh my God, that was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. There's a lot of Black history here.
Yeah, and it sounded like you had a lot of fun doing it too.
Oh, of course. Me, Queen, Cougar, Corso, Pony. Yeah.
All good
fun.
people.
Yeah.
Anyone else that you either forgot to talk about or you want to elaborate on more?
I'd like to talk a little bit more about Lisa Truck,
Oh.
because that was significant, although most people don't know about her. But Lisa Truck was a Leatherman who was also a drag queen in the 70s and was a member of one of the leather clubs here. But what's interesting is we never think about Black drag queens that early in San Francisco history, and we definitely don't think about drag queens and Leathermen mixing it up together in San Francisco history, because we think of, again, old guard San Francisco would never allow drag queens, but they were a huge part of the motorcycle clubs.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing all these stories with us.
Oh, absolutely.
Cool. If you guys want to watch any more of these, we've got several reviewed videos down below. If you ring the bell, and you'll be notified of all of them when they come up. And please subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments or even stories of your own that you think is relevant, please leave those down below. And we will continue to keep doing this. Thank you guys for all of your support. You guys have been amazing. Thank you, Graylin.
Thank you, Chris, for doing this. Thank you all. I hope you enjoy the show, and happy Juneteenth.
Bye.
Bye.